Hey everybody, welcome back to Biblical Theology today. One discussion that Judd and I have both had with different people lately is people have been asking us the question, why do Christians typically worship on Sunday rather than on Saturday? Of course, in the Old Testament, in the Ten Commandments even, there's a law concerning the Sabbath. And the Sabbath commandment, God says that he wants his people to set aside one day out of 7 as a period of rest and worship. And of course, for the Old Testament Jewish people, the Sabbath it was on Saturday. It was the 7th day of the week. And they did that because in Genesis 1 and 2, God worked for 6 days to create the world. And then on the 7th day, the last day of the week, he chose to rest. And so the day of rest was then put on Saturday for that reason. Christians, though, chose to change that a little bit. The early Christians, along with the majority of believers throughout church history, understood that we have 10 commandments instead of 9. Those commandments don't save us, but they are a guide for the Christian life. And so the command to observe the Sabbath is something that God still wants his people to be doing. Okay. This isn't something that was just abolished and now we turn away from it and don't observe it anymore. God still wants us to have a period of time every week where we gather together in order to worship and take time to rest. But it's obvious that Christians do that on the first day of the week, on Sunday, rather than on Saturday. So the question is raised, why do we do it that way? And that question is really important nowadays because that's really called into question even by people who claim Christ, who are believers in Jesus. The Seventh-day Adventist denomination, one of their key tenets is that they observe a Saturday Sabbath rather than a Sunday Sabbath. The Seventh-day Adventist movement grew out of a Baptist movement that had made the same argument. And so we're in a period of church history right now where there are a lot of people who are seriously asking that question, why do we do it on Saturday rather than on Sunday? And I think for a lot of these people, they're not trying to be contentious. They're trying to be, as much as they can, scriptural. They're looking at the Old Testament. They're looking at how the Sabbath was observed in the Old Testament, and they're asking, what basis do we have to change it? And I think that if we look carefully at the New Testament, and if we look carefully at the history of the church, we have really good reasons as to why the church decided to change the day from Saturday to Sunday, from the 7th day to the first day. I think one of the first places that we need to look for that is in the book of Acts. In the book of Acts, we'll see over and over again that early Christians went to the synagogues on Saturday. But they didn't go to the synagogue on Saturday to worship. Instead, when the early Christians are going to the synagogue on Saturday, they're doing it in order to preach the gospel to Jewish people in hopes of converting them. So Saturday, for the Christians, is not a day of worship and rest. It's a day of evangelism. In Acts chapter 20, verse 7, we have a story where it says, on the first day of the week, when we were gathered together to break bread, Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day, and he prolonged his speech until midnight. This is the story of Eutychus, the poor guy who falls asleep and then falls out of the window. But what we see here is that Paul, over and over again in Acts, is going into the synagogue on Saturday to try to win people to Christ. But it's on Sunday, here in this story, where he is worshiping with believers, he's preaching to them, and they're breaking bread, which throughout Luke and Acts is the terminology used for the Lord's Supper. And so that's the day when this church is gathering together in order to worship. If we keep going, thinking about Paul, in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 2, he commands the people in Corinth to, on the first day of the week, take up an offering for the poor in Jerusalem. And so it raises the question, why is he telling them to do that on the first day of the week? Why is he not telling them to do it on the 7th day of the week? And I think that this is practically just the easiest time for them to take up the offering. It's probably the moment when they're all gathered together, probably giving their regular gifts and tithes and offerings, and he's saying, at that meeting, whenever you're all gathered to worship God together, use that time to take up an offering, and whenever my people get to Corinth, they'll take that offering from you and take it to the poor in Jerusalem. But again, we see here that he's assuming that apparently they're going to be together on the first day of the week and can then, as a congregation, take up this offering. The final place that I think lends support to this idea that it's shifted from Saturday to Sunday and that we have biblical evidence for that is in Revelation chapter 1. In Revelation chapter 1, John is exiled on Patmos, and it says that he was in the Spirit worshiping on the Lord's Day. And that's when the vision comes to him. And if we start looking at early Christian sources, we have early Christian sources as early as AD 130 that will tell us that Lord's Day is the term that was being applied to Sunday. And so what is the day when John was apparently worshiping and was in the Spirit? Well, according to these early Christian sources, that was on Sunday. What's interesting about those early Christian sources that are telling us that is that a lot of the people who are writing those either directly knew the apostles or were in churches that the apostles founded or knew people who knew the apostles, but they're not very far removed. And so, if they're understanding Lord's Day to be Sunday, it makes pretty good sense to say that John was understanding Lord's Day to mean Sunday. And if this is a case of early Christians all of a sudden, on their own authority, not on the authority of the apostles, but on their own authority, switching the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday, we would expect that only some churches do that and that there's some sort of contention there, some sort of debate. Why do these guys in these churches think it's appropriate to change the day? Instead, we don't have any early debate over this. And universally, among these early Christians, we get the idea that Lord's Day means Sunday, and that's the day when they're gathering together to worship, hear the word preached, and take the Eucharist together. And so, why would the day change? We have 3 places in the New Testament that suggest the day has changed. We have the overwhelming, not just majority of early Christians saying that, but unanimously saying that. So why? If we look at the Gospels, we know that Jesus resurrected on Sunday. He was in the grave on the Sabbath. That's why the women don't come and anoint his body. It's because they're still observing Sabbath law, so they don't go on Saturday. But then Jesus is resurrected on Sunday, and it seems that the early Christians start calling Sunday the Lord's Day because that's the day when their Lord was resurrected. And they start celebrating and worshiping on Sunday because they're remembering the main event in the history of the world, that Jesus was raised from the dead on Sunday. Jesus says in the Gospels that he's Lord of the Sabbath. And so if he decides to change the day, if he decides to be resurrected on a Sunday and to have his followers celebrate his resurrection on every ensuing Sunday, he can do that. And I think that we can infer that that's what has happened. We have 3 places where the New Testament suggests it. We have the complete consensus of the early church suggesting that. And so I think it's a fair inference for us to say that that's what happened. And I think that there are big theological ideas that are at play here too. Jesus was resurrected on, we might say, the first day of the week. We could also say that he was resurrected on the 8th day of the week. The 8th is a new beginning. It's a new week. It's the start to a new week. And we see all sorts of newness language pop up all over the Bible whenever it starts talking about the resurrection and Jesus' salvific work. Jesus was the first fruits of the new creation, according to Paul. If we have faith in Jesus, then we have new life. We've died with him, we've been resurrected with him, and Paul says that we are new creatures. Jesus is ushering in, according to Revelation 21, a new heaven and a new earth, a new creation. And so it seems that Jesus is resurrected on Sunday, not just because it's the first day of the week, but because it's also the 8th day of the week, and he's doing something brand new. And he wants us to see that in the day that he's resurrected and choosing that day. I also think that something else that's at play here is that in the Old Covenant, the Sabbath is Saturday. And so what does your work week look like? It looks like work, 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 rest. You're working, trying to enter into the rest that God is providing for you. If you work, then you can rest. But that's not the message of the New Covenant. The New Covenant message in Jeremiah 31 is that the New Covenant isn't like the Old Covenant. In the New Covenant, it's not that you do the law and get the rest, it's that God himself writes the law on our heart and gives us the rest. And so it's not work, 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 rest. Instead, the work week looks totally different now. Now, it's rest. And then, because we have that rest, because we have salvation through faith in Christ, because of that, we now work out of that. So we start with the rest, and then we work, 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 work. So I think that there are big theological ideas at play about new creation and about salvation, and that those are going on here. Again, Jesus has the authority to change this if Jesus wants to change it. And I think Jesus does change it because he wants us every single week to remember, okay, why am I celebrating his resurrection on Sunday? It's because he's ushered in a new creation, and that everyone who repents and has faith in him will be a part of that new creation. And I think he's wanting us to remember that we're not working to enter the rest anymore. Instead, we have the rest, and because we have salvation, we do good works out of it. It's not to gain it, but it's because we have it. It's not the root, it's the fruit of the salvation. Something that I think we have to mention as well is that the Seventh-day Adventist and the group of Baptists that called themselves Seventh-day Baptist usually have a very suspicious view of church history. The Anabaptists in the Reformation talked a great deal about what they termed the Great Apostasy. They said that the Great Apostasy means that the church was pure in doctrine and piety until about the year 303. Because in the year 303, Constantine became emperor, and Christianity went from a place of being persecuted politically to a place of political privilege. And that the moment that church and state mixed, Christianity was corrupted. And this factors into the conversation about Saturday or Sunday a great deal, because Seventh-day Adventists and these Baptists that have made the same argument will typically say that Constantine was the one who changed the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday. Sunday was typically the day when you worshipped idol gods, especially the sun, S-U-N. And so he thought that we could make Christianity and paganism merge if we changed the day from Saturday to Sunday, and for some reason all of the Christians got on board with this and never really debated it and went with what Constantine wanted. The issue with that sort of argumentation is that it really ignores the Christian documents that we have from before 303. Again, we have early Christians saying that the Lord's Day that shows up in Revelation and in 1 Corinthians, that term Lord's Day is being referred to as Sunday. Again, we don't have a big schism when the day shifts, even though there's going to be schisms over in the East and West over when we celebrate Easter before 303. There's not a schism over Saturday and Sunday. And so there is schism over dates in the early church, but there's not a schism over Saturday or Sunday because everyone's worshiping on Sunday already. About 100 years before Constantine, you have the Council of Laodicea, which establishes that Sunday is the rightful day to worship on. And so this argument that Constantine is the one that makes this change really has no historical legs to stand on. It's a bad view of church history. And so we can look at this issue. We can look at the New Testament and see that the day shifting is suggested there. We can then look at church history and say that not just the consensus, not just the majority, but unanimously, the church celebrated on Sunday. We can look at the fact that that continued as an unbroken tradition until very near the modern day, and we can say with confidence that the apostles changed this on their authority that was given to them by Christ because Jesus wanted them to, because Jesus wanted us every single week to remember that we're a part of a new creation that he ushered in, and he wants us to remember that we are not working to gain salvation, we're not working to gain the rest, but we're working because the rest has been given to us. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. And there's no if then, there's no strings attached. We come to Christ as we are, and he gives us rest. And so this is a big deal, I think. And it's a big deal that we understand why we do what we do. And so, again, I think that there's good reasons that we worship on Sunday. I don't think that we should change that practice. I think that this accurately and powerfully reflects New Testament theology and the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I think with confidence we can defend our practice in doing this way. So we hope that this video is helpful. Once again, we hope that it helps make things in Scripture and in the life of the church clear, and we hope that you'll continue to tune in. Thanks.